He had one of the greatest seasons of all time, and yet no one remembers. For many people, the first three players that come to mind when discussing the controversial 2006 MVP race are Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James. Since we're talking about two of the biggest basketball stars ever, both fan bases argue passionately about why their favorite player was snubbed. All that anger and frustration go directed toward Nash, who won the MVP. This has caused us to forget that Dirk Nowitzki was every bit as deserving of that award. In fact, he finished ahead of Kobe Bryant in the MVP polls. The case for him is rather simple. He finished with the highest win shares, offensive win shares per 48 minutes, offensive box plus minus, and PER in the league. We shouldn't be surprised by this, because Dirk was in the middle of his prime. From a statistical standpoint, this was the best season of his legendary career. He recorded career highs in points, win shares, offensive win shares, value over replacement player rating, offensive box plus minus, and PER. The numbers back up what many of his contemporaries were saying about him. There was no one that meant more to their team than Dirk did. For example, this is what Houston Rockets coach Jeff Van Gundy said about his impact on the Mavs that season. He's as valuable to his team as any player in the league. The most unusual thing about Dallas is that they lost last year's MVP and still get better. It's mind-boggling. Then there's what Mark Cuban said. There should be no question that Dirk is a leading MVP candidate. You can't look at any other team with a single All-Star and find one who has been more valuable to his team and has led his team to more wins. He might be the most biased observer, but we can't deny the legitimacy of his remarks. Dirk led his team to 60 victories without any All-Star teammates. But that's not even the most impressive part. Dallas had to play portion of the second half of the season without key players such as Josh Howard, Adrian Griffin, Devin Harris, Marquise Daniels, and Keith Van Horn. Then you have the fact that Jerry Stackhouse missed a large portion of the first half of the season. Those 6 players combined missed a total of 155 games. So for basically the whole year, this team that wasn't loaded with talent in the first place was shorthanded. Yet they still finished with the second best record as well as the highest offensive rating in the league. The one player that is solely responsible for that is Dirk. That was especially the case when they were down all those players heading into the playoffs. He averaged an impressive 28.9 points per game on 49% shooting, 10.1 rebounds per game, and 3.2 assists per game after the All-Star break. But what's more impressive than those numbers was the way he was getting those points. He would punish smaller defenders in the post, and he would easily get by bigger defenders with his spin dribble move that he would often utilize. Then he could spread the floor with his impeccable outside touch. Suns coach Mike D'Antoni even called him during their conference final series one of the greatest shooters to ever play the game, a guy in Larry Bird's class as a pure shooter. And if all else fails, he had his patented one-legged fall-away jumper. Sports Illustrated even called it the most unblockable shot since Kareem's skyhook. The best example of that came against the Golden State Warriors when he scored 51 points on 67% shooting, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals. He was also exceptionally clutch that season. He made the game-winning free throws against the Memphis Grizzlies. He scored the game-winning jumper against the Clippers. And then he had 2 clutch moments against the Toronto Raptors. He made the game-saving block to force overtime, and then he made the game-winning jumper. If they would have had the best record, he would have won the MVP award. Then in the playoffs, he led the Mavs to the finals while posting the 3rd highest win shares for a single playoff run in history. Let's not forget that he beat the defending champions while averaging 27 and 13 for the series. That includes making 2 huge clutch plays in Game 7 on the road that won the game for them. Then in the conference finals, he defeated the MVP of the league, and he even had a 50-point performance. He was on the verge of having one of the greatest playoff runs ever until Dwayne Wade came along and put his team on his back. But going back to his regular season performance, the only pushback that one would have is that he wasn't close to being as statistically dominant as Kobe and LeBron were. That explains why many fans outside of Texas don't remember much of his season. It's a lost gem, and one has to do a little digging to really appreciate what he accomplished. but those who were watching closely at the time knew that he was playing up to par with those legendary players. Even Steve Nash, when asked about Dirk's MVP worthiness, told Mark Stein of ESPN, "What more does Dirk have to do?" But now that he's going to be officially in the Hall of Fame, we can remember fondly how incredible of a player he was in his prime.